Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here to the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority Board of Commissioners monthly meeting held today on April 15th, 2021 at 12 noon in the Commission Chambers at 340 North 11th Street. At this time, we'd like to ask Ms. Dominique Robinson if she'll help us with the roll call and confirm that we're in compliance with the Nevada open meeting law.
Chairperson Scott Black.
Here?
Vice Chairperson Olivia Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner Valerie Craig. Commissioner Cheryl Davis. Commissioner Sharon Davis. Commissioner William McCurdy II. Commissioner Tick Segerbloom.
Here, can you hear me?
Commissioner Dan K. Shaw. Commissioner Luciana Turner. A quorum is present and we are in compliance with the Nevada open meeting law.
Thank you so much, Dominique. If you would all be so kind as to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Wait just a minute. Mr. Sharon Davis is here.
Hi, Sharon. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much for that. At this time, we'll go to the second item on our agenda, which is public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for discussion and possible action. If you wish to be heard, come to the speaker's podium, clearly state your name and address, and please spell your last name for the record. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed will be limited to 3 minutes. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of a presentation, this will be done by the chair or by the board by a majority vote. Are there any individuals that would like to speak on posted agenda items for action today? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and go to item number 3 on our agenda, approval of the minutes of a regular meeting of March 18th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And is there a second?
I second the motion.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Diaz, a second by Commissioner Craig. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Please state your name if you're calling in online with any opposition during the course of our meeting. That passes unanimously. Thank you. For the record, we have joining us via video and phone, we have Commissioner Dan Shaw, we have Mr. Segerbloom, Commissioner Segerbloom, who announced himself, and then as well as Commissioner Sharon Davis is on the phone. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Item number 4, approval of the agenda with the inclusion of any emergency items and deletion of any items. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Shaw.
I'll second.
We have a second by Vice Chair Diaz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you. Going to section 2, our consent agenda, which comprises item number 5 and 6. Are there any comments or questions from the board relative to items on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda as presented. We have a motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner McCurdy, a second by Vice Chair Diaz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Section 3, Commissioners and Interim Executive Director recognitions. Item number 7, are there any individuals that we will be presenting today that have departed?
Yes, Chair Black, I would like to read the names of some of our residents and clients who have departed.
Thank you, Mr.
Since
Gressler.
the last meeting. The first is Joan Caderero, who was deceased on March 31st, 2021, from Archie Grant Park. Next is Anna Flores, who was a resident at Brown Homes, and she was deceased on March the 15th, 2021. From Robert Gordon Plaza, we've unfortunately lost 2 of our friends. George Musavi departed on March 23rd, 2021, and Maurice Saunders departed on March 15th, 2021. From Marble Manor, we have lost Demetrius Lockhart on March 31st, 2021. From Arthur D. Sartini Plaza, we've lost Amin Avalos on March the 8th, 2021, and Arthur Podell, or Poodle, I'm not sure how I pronounced it, March 29th, 2021. And finally, from our scattered site program, we've lost Rosemary Calhoun, who was deceased on March 16th, 2021. That completes my report, sir.
Thank you. If you would all join me in a moment of silence and reflection for these 8 individuals that have passed from us. Thank you very much. This time we'll go to, for discussion and possible action, item number 8. This is a public hearing item, approval of the revised operating budget for the Espinosa Terrace fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021. With your permission, Mr. Gressler, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Fred Herron regarding this agenda item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Fred Herron, Director of, Chief Administrative Officer of Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. The budget that is brought to you guys for approval is a revised budget for the Espinosa Terrace Family Managers project. It's a 100-unit project that was converted to RAD back in 2018. During the year, we noticed that, and this budget is on a calendar year, January 1 through December 31st. This year, notice in reviewing the budget, I noticed that the net income for dwelling income was actually about $139,000 on a projected model less than what we had budgeted initially. And I think that was basically done in preparing the budget. We looked at last year's performance and noticed and included a proration based on that performance. We're not realizing that was the first year of the project, and it wasn't at 100%. So at 100%, we would receive additional $139,000 in revenue. Another change was in admin salaries increase, I guess about $70,000 based on a position that was added to the budget, which brings a net income for the project an additional $64,000 with the revised budget. And we ask the board to approve this for the Espinosa Terrace. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Herron. We'll open a public hearing on this item. Are there any individuals who would like to speak specifically to this agenda item from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. And are there any questions from the board or comments for Mr. Herron regarding this proposed proposed budget? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Thank you, Mr. Herron.
So move, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Diaz, a second by Commissioner McCurdy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition, please state your name. Hearing none, that passes. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to the business, Section 5 business items. Number 9, NDOT, Nevada Department of Transportation Downtown Access Project presentation. We have an individual from the Department of Transportation here to give us a presentation. And if you'll please state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Chairperson Scott Black. My name is Ryan Wheeler with the Nevada Department of Transportation. I'm a project manager for NDOT. And thank you for allowing us to come and give a short presentation about the Downtown Access Project, an upcoming project. We've also been able to share this information with staff, and so during that meeting, we thought it would be beneficial to come share it with the commissioners and help raise awareness of this upcoming project. I'd also like to recognize my colleague here in the audience with me. Debbie Bonet is our community liaison for the project. She also helped NDOT with Project Neon as well. So I'm going to jump through and introduce the project to you. So this project is located on Interstate 515 or 9395, right outside and up top, right? And it goes from Rancho Drive to Mojave Road, just east of Eastern Avenue. We'll go over project needs and goals, improvements, design alternatives, the street closures, and potential impacts to the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority properties. So we are at the beginning of this project. We're the environmental phase. We anticipate being complete with the environmental phase by 2022. What happens in the environmental phase? We raise awareness about the project. We do community outreach like we're doing right now. We have 3 build alternatives that we're considering, and at the end of this environmental phase, we select a preferred alternative, the alternative that will move forward in design And eventually, when the project's funded, we'll move on to construction. Now, construction isn't going to start till 2027, so we have a lot of things to do before we actually get to a point where we're hiring a contractor. This is a long-term project, and it's not to be confused with this, what we're calling interim project, which is going to happen a month or two, which is going to add an additional lane on the viaduct and do some structural repairs. This project, this interim project, is about a $30 million project, and will be about a year long. The long-term project is going to be, again, like a Project Neon type level project, and more of a bigger fix to the freeway. So why are we doing this project? All of you that work here probably ride on this freeway, drive this freeway and realize that there's some whoops on it, you know, the up and down ride. Also, the bridges are just getting old. The first one was built in '68, the next one was built in 1980, and combined it's 1.6 miles of bridges. And the bridges are just getting old, and when bridges get old, they need to be replaced, or we need to do something different with them. So that's the main reason we're doing that. The second reason is we know that there's poor traffic flow. The ramps are closed or spaced too closely, and so it causes congestion and backups in both directions, all the way south of Charleston and west of almost to Decatur in some cases. And then obviously the Las Vegas Valley is continuing to grow. That ADT at the bottom means average daily traffic. Right now it's about 175,000. In 2040 it's projected to be about 220,000. So some of our proposed improvements is we're going to address the viaduct, what to do with the bridges. We're going to fix the ramp spacing. We're going to add freeway capacity. Right now it's 4 lanes in each direction. We're going to bump that up to about 6 lanes in each direction. We're going to add a new HOV. We're going to add HOV lanes to this side of I-15 and add 2 new HOV interchanges, one at City Parkway and one at Maryland Parkway. And then we're going to improve bike and pedestrian mobility on both sides of the freeway between Las Vegas Boulevard and Eastern Avenue. So these are our design alternatives. We have a website up. It's NDOTDAP for Downtown Access Project, so ndotdap.com. And you can watch videos of these different alternatives and learn about the differences between them. I'll take these out of order. One alternative is no build, as if we were to do nothing, and the Federal Highway Administration requires that we always evaluate what if we did nothing. The other 3 are build alternatives, and alternative 1 is to recess the freeway. Well, what does that mean? So today, if you walk outside, you're walking in the shade and the bridge is up in the air. The recess freeway is actually to put it in a trench, 25 feet below the ground, and have the cars ride in that trench. Okay, then again, on the website, there's videos that show that. Alternative number 2 and alternative number 3 are similar. The freeway would stay at a similar height as what it is today. It's just that it wouldn't be on a bridge for 1.6 miles. We would use fill or earthen material instead of a bridge for 1.6 miles. The difference between alternative 2 and 3, we have one that's called the southern alignment and northern alignment, and that primarily exists between Las Vegas Boulevard and the freeway, and one takes a more northern alignment and the other one takes a more southern alignment through that area. And a lot of good information on the website. This is an example of the recessed freeway. You know, when I said put it in a trench, you're like, what would that look like? Well, it looks like this. And so your cross streets like Maryland and Las Vegas Boulevard and Main Street and Casinos would now be a straight bridge over the top of that trench that is 25 feet in the ground. Alternative number 2 and 3, elevated. Again, it'd be on earthen material as shown here in this typical section. And then this is the difference between alternative 2 and 3 of the alignments between the boulevard and I-15 essentially. The yellow shaded area is the southern alignment and the blue shaded area is the northern alignment. And so you affect different properties going through this corridor. But outside, even though the project limits are all the way to Eastern, outside of these limits that you're seeing, the projects are essentially the same as far as the comparison between alternative 2 and alternative 3. NDOT just finished, we've had a good public outreach campaign. Back in August and September, we had what we called a virtual public meeting because of the pandemic. We weren't able to congregate. So we had a website open for 30 days for people to learn about the project and provide comments. We received about 100 comments at that time. We came away from that worried that the people between the Las Vegas Boulevard and Eastern didn't really understand the potential to close some streets. And so all three alternatives proposed to close some of these local streets shown on this exhibit. And so the streets of 7th, 8th, 10th, 14th, 16th, and 19th are proposed to be closed in each alternative, with 15th and 21st Street proposed to remain open to bikes and pedestrians only. And then in one alternative, and only one alternative, the recessed alternative, 4th Street is proposed to be closed to 515. And so we just finished a 5-week campaign that maybe some of you were familiar with because you saw the signs, maybe you had to be rerouted a little bit. And that was to try and capture the voice of this community, get on the website and provide what their feedback was on these potential to propose to close the streets. We got good feedback. We had about 350 responses, actually almost 400 responses of people by phone calls and filling out surveys. I have a few more slides and then I'm sure you have lots of questions and we'll answer them the best we can. We wanted to relate to you how this affects Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority, how this may affect the Southern Nevada Regional Authority. And so what I'm showing here is an aerial view of your facilities. We're located in this building right here at a location south of the freeway. And you can see that just east of Maryland Parkway. We know you have properties on the north side of the freeway as well. I'm going to bounce kind of to the next few slides, which show the build alternatives and how it affects your properties. The properties to the south of the freeway are not affected. But in each alternative to the north, you'll see that the freeway's pushing to the north, and so the buildings and some of the residences north of the freeway will be affected. So this is existing, and we'll go to the next one. So that's a big wow, right? Let's do that again. So that's existing, and we're moving the freeway. In order to get those two additional lanes in each direction, we have to widen, and so it really jumps up to the north. That's the recessed alternative, and that's the largest impacted footprint there. And you see the buildings to the south are still the same. So that's existing. Now we'll bounce to, this is the south alternative. And so the reach is still to the north, but not as far as what the previous alternative was. And then the next alternative, which is the north alternative, is pretty similar to the one I just showed you. So here's kind of a list of what we anticipate those impacts may be. The office building north of I-515 is impacted in all three alternatives. That's 380 North Maryland Parkway. The office building south of I-515, 322 North 10th Street, not directly impacted by the alternatives. There would be loss of parking spaces under 515, some fourplexes north of I-515. We anticipate that several apartment units would be effective. List the buildings. In the south alternative, there'd be 5 buildings and 20 apartments. Same with the north alternative. In the recessed alternative, it's a further reach to the north, and so you have more buildings and apartment units that are impacted. In one alternative, the recessed alternative, the vacant lot at Cedar and 28th would be impacted as well. I know this is hard to hear. I know you probably have lots of questions. We'll say again that we're at the planning stages of the project. The next phases of the project are not yet funded. The NEPA phase of the project right now is funded. But the bridge is getting old, and at some point NDOT has to do something with that. And you could tell by driving the freeway and the traffic and congestion and safety issues that are there as well. Again, this shows the schedule. And I'll just iterate because as we're potentially impacting properties, you're like, what do we do, right? We don't know what to do until we have a preferred alternative. When we have a preferred alternative, we'll know exactly which properties are impacted. And then we do what's called a right-of-way setting, which sets what the right-of-way needs to be, what NDOT's new right-of-way needs to be in order to build the project. Once we get to that point, then we move into the next phase, which is right-of-way / final design. And that's the point where we would start the acquisition process and be communicating with you about which properties are affected, and NDOT would have to be purchasing properties in order to obtain that right-of-way. We have our right-of-way specialists that we can help answer any questions. I could try to answer any questions at this time as well. But again, we're not quite to that phase, but we want to make you aware of what could be happening so that you can plan for what may need to occur, whatever the case is. Once we have the preferred alternative, NDOT will decide to fund the next portion of the project. So we will not have those right-of-way discussions till NDOT says, oh, we have the money to do it. And this type of project is, again, like a neon type level project, so it's going to be expensive to build this project. And so once that next portion is funded and NDOT's fully committed, we'll be having those discussions. And with that, I'll take any questions. I'm sure you have many.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. I was just, as you were talking, I was remembering as a young kid when this was originally built. And then in the late 80s, when I got my license, I borrowed my grandpa's Dodge Diplomat, and I loved floating over those bumps. That car really had some good suspension. And we also have the best covered parking in all of Clark County here, the most substantial. So a lot of things to consider. I'll open it up to the board for any questions or clarification that we need from Mr. Wheeler at this time. Are there any questions from the board? Ms. Craig, Valerie Craig.
Hi.
Hi.
When you say impacted for, when you say impacted for apartments, to me, that's very general. Just, can you be specific about, just give me, you're speculating and you're just postulating what may happen. Can you just give me a general idea of what you mean when you say impacted?
It means that NDOT would be required to purchase the property in order to build the project that I'm illustrating to
They'd be
you.
demolished and
Yeah.
relocated.
Those are the kind of words I need to hear. You're saying, so generally, some time ago, when I lived in Indianapolis, pretty much people seldom ever got the value for their property. Is that the general flow here in Vegas, or?
I'm sorry, will you say that one more time? In Indianapolis, what?
In my city, whenever the transportation came in and they were doing some changes, individuals seldom ever receive the cost value.
Market value.
Yeah, market value of their property. Would that, generally, just speculating, would that be so here?
In this case, we would pay fair market value.
Okay.
And so our right-of-way division, we have to follow, because have to follow Federal Highway Administration guidelines. We make sure that we pay actual right-of-way acquisition costs, what the value of the property is, just as if somebody were to put it up for sale for current value. Now, with that said, that's the acquisition of the property. We also assist with relocation of a property, whether it's a house or a facility or a business or whatever the case is. So there's two really money sides of that we pay the value of the property, the current value based on appraisals by right-of-way professionals. And then we also help that entity, whether it's a home, a business, or an industry, to relocate to a new facility. So there's relocation costs tied to that as well.
That some parking spaces would be affected. Now, when you say affected, does that mean that it's difficult to park?
Mm-hmm.
So how would that help the individuals who are living in working in a certain spot and they have nowhere to park? How would that be affected?
So if let's say you have like 100 parking spaces out here today underneath the bridge, the impact would be that needs to be replaced in some kind, in a way that is still adjacent to your services, whether that building gets relocated. We'd also have to provide a similar amount of parking spaces as well. If the building's not relocated, but just your parking spaces are impacted, we'd have to find where a new location is for you to park.
One more question. So you have a history of being able, whenever renovation is done, of people who park, that they will be able to have somewhere to park?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Craig. Any other questions for Mr. Wheeler from the board? Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Department of Transportation for making this presentation today. I think it's very important that we as commissioners know what's kind of in works. And right now it's an exploratory mode, but I think it will make us wiser as we're making decisions about what to fund, what lots to work on, what things to repair or what things not to repair. It will make us fiscally savvy and make those decisions thinking about potential changes in the future or forecast in our future. And so to that point, I was very interested in knowing how much of the vacant lot off of Cedar and 28th would be gobbled away. You had the renderings for the bridge and the impact kind of over this vicinity in this area, but I'm very tempted because we were looking at that lot seriously as to what we could be doing to bring more housing opportunities to our community. But now learning that that lot could be half its size, it would then totally change the intentions and the direction of that potential plan. So is there a way that we could receive some renderings that show or forecast potential changes to that lot as well, so that we, as we're exploring moving projects forward, we're fully aware of potential changes or takings?
Yeah, so we could follow up and provide some renderings of that, but I'll just speak to that a little bit to give you an idea that, again, that lot on Cedar and 28th was only impacted in one of the alternatives, right? So I want to bring that to light to make sure that as we finish the NEPA process, so by the end of next year, we'll know what the preferred alternative is. And so if it's the recessed alternative, then that lot is potentially impacted. And so if it's not, then we can touch base with you and say, hey, it's not that alternative, and that lot's not going to be impacted. So we have 3 build alternatives, so 1 out of 3 chance of that lot being impacted. If it is that, the build alternative,